What I enjoy about the Hangout movie is that everyone's got a favourite one. It's that film you reach to when the days beat you up and you need a little something to raise your spirits before you get back into the action. A mood lifter-upper, a palate cleanser, in short, a comfort watch. It comes in many names and labels, but for today I'm going to zoom into the concept of the Hangout movie. The kind of film where you can get lost in its world, yet never takes itself too seriously.
Surprise! Get that cone out of my face!
What I'm here to discuss is where this beloved genre started and where it's going in a new age of movie watching. Now, I see the Hangout movie as more of a subjective genre within the world of cinema, so there's no real starting off point to look to. However, throughout the nearly 150 years since the dawn of the motion picture, there have been cultural touchstones that have led us to where we are today. In an article I read, Quentin Tarantino is said to have coined the term Hangout movie when talking about the 1950s western Rio Bravo back in 2007.
To me, it's one of my favorite, it's one of the greatest westerns, yes, it's one of the greatest Hawks films, it's one of the greatest John Wayne movies, but it also fits into another genre because I'm always about cutting movies up and putting them into subgenres. It's one of the great hangout movies. And there are certain movies that you hang out with the characters so much that they actually become your friends.
Now, whether that's true or not, I think it's interesting to see Tarantino as somewhat of a godfather of the Hangout movie, both as a pseudo-scholar and a contributor. I say this because not only does he keep a discourse around film alive, but he always seems to inject some of that hangout energy into his films. A mix of relatable moments, character growth, and an emphasis on good dialogue over action. These are the core ingredients of a perfect hangout movie. I'm not saying that everything Tarantino has directed falls under this umbrella, but he's definitely added to the genre with his filmography and accompanying style. Arguably, the most famous example being his 1994 cult classic, Pulp Fiction. Everyone knows a little something about Pulp Fiction, even if it's just from the memes and quotes, but I'd like to view it from a different angle today. I'd like to see it as one of the figureheads of the Hangout movie. For those who don't know, Pulp Fiction is a crime comedy that follows hitmen, gangsters, bandits, and a boxer in Los Angeles. But what makes it stand out is its rhythm. Usually films are designed to fulfill a goal that the characters are headed toward, but as is customary with the Hangout movie, Pulp Fiction's plot is somewhat thin. Yet the big difference is that you never feel bored, as the film carries you on a roller coaster of great dialogue and gripping action. I should say that when I'm talking about roller coasters, I'm not talking about the oblivions of this world, where there's only one standout moment. I'm talking about the smiler of films, where there are too many highlights to remember. The Misalou opener, the Royale with cheese chat, and the Path of the Righteous Man speech are all equally iconic, and that's just to name a few. This cinematic greatness wasn't an accident though. It was orchestrated by the film's director and certified cinephile, Quentin Tarantino. He used his extensive knowledge of films to craft a new kind of experience that gelled funny dialogue with magnetic performances and tied it together in a non-linear crime story that knew how to have fun. This was a recipe for success that popularised the genre of hangout and showed the world that films could look and sound like Pulp Fiction while still entertaining audiences. Not everything had to be linear, end of the world, or an action to attract a crowd. On top of that, Pulp Fiction came out at a good time as well. It appeared in cinemas a year after Richard Linklater's seminal hangout piece Dazed and Confused, which followed freshmen and seniors messing around and chilling out on the last day of high school back in 1976. Very different in premise to Pulp Fiction, but united by their trailblazing attitude. Both films played with time, challenged the norms, and in turn injected something new into the veins of 90s cinema, starting a cinematic tidal wave that's evolved through the years. But how did the genre evolve? Good question. In the 90s, Richard Linklater and Quentin Tarantino added to a boom of hangout films across the decade, which Collider's Wes Skinner saw as a byproduct of Gen X malaise. It's fair to say that this malaise can be seen across every genre, and other pivotal films like Reality Bites, Trainspotting, and Fight Club, as audiences and filmmakers became tired of the old guard, embracing this new ethos instead.
What? The things you own end up owning you. But do what you like, man.
Everyone wanted something new and less rigid when it came to the Hollywood formula. The early 20th century had the studio system, which made reliable classics firmly cemented in their genre. The 1970s had a wave of new Hollywood directors that paved the way for independent creative voices. Now the 90s roll around and Hangout movies fill that vacuum with vibes and angst, responding to cinema's need for fresh voices. But the Hangout movie didn't die in the 90s, instead it evolved and in my opinion became the 2000s comedy. You know what I'm on about, the comedies that were knocking up the box office. Your Will Ferrells, Vince Vaughn's, Steve Carell's, Seth Rogen's and Jim Carrey's. They share the same energy as the 90s Hangout movie, filling that gap people needed. That feeling of vegging out in front of the cinema or TV, unbothered by the overarching story but there for the laughs and moment-to-moment vibes.
What in the hell's diversity?
Well, I could be wrong, but I believe diversity is an old wooden ship that was used during the Civil War era.
Now there were still purebred Hangout movies out there, but the industry was changing, and the noughties comedy was the next step in that pathway. Sadly, as time progressed, there became less and less space for this genre, as comedy became hybridized and shoehorned into other films. Specifically, I'm talking about the Marvelization of cinema. You no longer get pure actions, instead there are action comedies. Why have an out-and-out comedy when you could put some punchlines and quips into another genre and say it's a slash comedy? Hangout movies are all about chilling out and laughing, but this group is becoming endangered by the hybridization of genres we see currently. Nowadays, this slashing of genres is very prevalent, and Hangout movies are seen as a risky gamble. Therefore, when we do see these kind of films pop up, they're usually whisked off to streaming to see how they fare, or given limited theatrical runs. If they succeed, then it's a success, but if they sink, then it's no big loss. It's a sad state of affairs, but on the whole, audiences don't seem to be there for comedies and Hangout movies as they once were. Now there are certain exceptions like the Barbie phenomenon, or sleeper hits like Bottoms, or even award winners like the Banshees of Inisherin and Poor Things. But comedy on the whole has taken a hitting, especially post-COVID. Whether tastes have changed or the industry has changed is still up for debate, but now, from what I can see, it's only the tentpole films that truly do well at the box office. Big budget films with highly driven narratives and hybridized comedy. In other words, the complete opposite to the Hangout. This change in consumption leaves all of the films to scrape by on streaming as people glance between them and their phones. Personally, I feel that the future of comedy and Hangout movies is pretty bleak, as people are turning to TV shows and memes for comedy more than they are the silver screen. But who knows, there might be some new films to turn that around. Here's hoping. As always, I've been Never Hold Back, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.